What has Vice been up to? You might have asked yourself this question on a very boring day, or you might have not even thought about it at all. An article from February 21st, 2020, "We can't have a feminist future without abolishing the family." The feminist thinker Sophie Lewis has a radical proposal for what comes next. You have to be a little impressed with this. To make the world a better place, to be more forward-thinking and progressive in our ways of life, we have to become disconnected. We have to become less of a community. This is the first I've ever heard of this person, is this Vice article. It's a puff piece. In the very first sentence of the article, they bring up that Sophie Lewis had dealt with her mother passing away in March of 2019. Maybe this plays into the overall theme of family, but I think, considering that this person is advocating for abolishing the family unit, doesn't really make sense. It seems to be an attempt to get sympathy from the reader before the reader has had a chance to hear what the person has to say. If this woman really stands behind what she believes in, then surely the fact that her mother passed last year is inconsequential. The Vice article also references an article on The Atlantic for the March 2020 issue, and it was archived on February 22nd, 2020. It doesn't have a date listed for the time of publication, but it was probably just before the other article went live. In this article, it says, "The nuclear family was a mistake. The family structure we've held up as a cultural ideal for the past half-century has been catastrophic for many. It's time to figure out better ways to live together." One pattern that I see emerge from these types of people is that despite how sad they appear to be, they're always so eager trying to give their advice on how to live to others, saying it will make them happy, despite the obvious contradiction you see right before your eyes. To give you a brief summary of what I just read, this woman's idea for a utopia is to have motherhood outsourced to the community. Really, it just seems like an excuse for a woman like her to not have to worry about being responsible. I mean, maybe I'm being cynical here, but the way I interpret this is this woman wants to have as carefree of a lifestyle as she can and have people voluntarily clean up her mess for her. And no, I'm not referring to the children as the messes, but rather the destruction, the pure selfishness that leaves destruction in its wake. I have a few bits from the article pulled up here. Let's take a look. Lewis studied English literature at Oxford as an undergraduate, then received a master's in the university's environmental policy program. To her chagrin, what had historically been a rather radical program, led by a Marxist professor, had become one run by an employee of the World Bank. A representative from the oil and gas conglomerate BP delivered a lecture on the first day of classes. When Lewis told the professor she'd been under the impression that the program would be about challenging the corporate interests BP represented, Lewis said the professor told her, "You can't just change the world." The "how dare you" is implied, by the way. Here's another bit from the article that answered a question I brought up earlier. And no, Lewis didn't find that looking after her sick mother contradicted her stance on the nuclear family. If we had achieved the ends of family abolition already, there would have been a vast network of people to care for her in those final months of her life, not just Lewis and her brother. But shouldn't the father have been there if it was truly a nuclear family that you had? And here's the last bit from this article that I'll show. At this point, surrogacy becomes somewhat metaphorical. Lewis isn't asking that we all agree to physically gestrate fetuses that aren't biologically ours. Her radical position is that we practice full surrogacy by abolishing the family. That means caring for each other not in discrete private units, also known as nuclear households, but rather within larger systems of care that can provide us with the love and support we can't always get from blood relations, something Lewis knows all too well. Even those of us who might call our family situations relatively happy should sign on to this project of demolishing their essential structure, Lewis says. Nuclear households create the infrastructure for capitalism, passing wealth and property down family trees, concentrating it in the hands of the few at the top of our class hierarchy. Maintaining the traditional family structure over time has also meant exploiting POCs and disowning QCs. While this woman does seem to speak from experience, being isolated and alone all the time, I guess if she says it makes her happy, who are we to disagree? This is nothing new to humankind. We've had sad, snooty people condescending everyone, telling everyone how to live for as long as humans have existed and been able to communicate with one another. However, it is strange, downright bizarre, when you come across articles and statements and calls to action like this. No one thinks that this might be a bit too much? No one in her life, maybe a family member, could have gone, maybe you're going a bit off the deep end. They mentioned in the article that she has a brother as well. I wonder how he feels about her particular perspective in regards to family abolition. I mean, what does that say about their dynamic? It has been rather entertaining watching people like her become more and more vocal about the things that they believe in. They've become more lionized and more courageous in spouting things that other people might consider a bit off the deep end. She was even approached for an appearance on Tucker Carlson but declined, likely to showcase her moral virtue. I would never go on Fox News. Oh man, they're fake. They're the only fake news. None of these other people on cable news would ever lie to any of us. They even complained in the Vice article that Tucker Carlson covered the story anyway, despite the woman refusing to appear. She gets free promotion. She didn't even have to show up, and she was still outraged. Maybe there's a different story to tell here. I wonder if her motivation is driven by the sunk cost fallacy. Maybe after investing so much into this idea of progressivism and isolation, now that she realizes that no one's going to be there for her when she's in that bed, she's beginning to regret the decisions she made. But wait, when that's me in the bed, some of you are going to take care of me, right? Like a big family? Somebody's going to be here? Well, unless you had children, I don't see that happening. And perhaps that's the takeaway from this article. If you grow up and never grow a family, maybe you'll end up bitter and angry, expecting everybody to be there for you in your time of need, despite you not putting in the time that would have been required as a member of a family. Growing up for years together as you develop, that's really what makes a family. That's what makes the bond so strong between siblings and between parent and child. There's no way that you can expect that same sort of dynamic between you and a random person on the street. It's strange, you never really see advice on how to have a stronger family, or how to make the bonds between siblings and between parent and child stronger and more everlasting. It's always about breaking down. Have you noticed that? It's not just me, is it? This is the end product of buying wholesale what they feed you at college. As with most things in life, you have to take the good with the bad, and you have to be able to detect on your own when somebody is peddling some BS. What this woman is preaching might sound nice on paper, but you have to consider that not everybody is so social. Not everybody would be able to grow this family of friends that she seems to think would blossom very naturally and very equally amongst all people. There are some people who don't thrive in society. There are some people who have difficulty maintaining and building friendships. This is one of the reasons, one of the many reasons, why having a family is so important. It's something that is universal for all people, and it is beneficial for the natural growth of human beings. The one question I would love to ask this woman, this Sophie Lewis, are you happy? We should all take a look at the example that you provide by living your life, by showing us. There would be no real way to say for sure if she's a happy person besides just asking her. But I think it's really telling based on the fact that this person is advocating not just in an article, it's her life's work, to abolish the family unit. That doesn't seem to be something a happy person would want to do, especially when the family unit brings so much happiness to other people. I mean, just because it didn't work for Sophie Lewis doesn't mean that it can't work for other people, or hasn't worked for people for hundreds and thousands of years. I mean, if the family unit was so unsuccessful, how did the human race dominate the food chain and make its way out of it? If it was so bad, why is it that human beings are the most successful race on the planet Earth? If I could just call it as I see it, this is somebody that spent many years not knowing what they wanted to do with their life, and they're finally throwing something at the wall to see if it'll stick. I think it's likely that this person will probably move on to something else in a few years. I don't see this as being something somebody can consistently push for more than maybe 2 years at most. Alright, well that'll be it for this video. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I took some of your advice. I saw almost overwhelming requests for longer videos, so I figured, what the heck? I'll just make these over 10 minutes and I might do more videos throughout the day, like 1 or 2 if I have something to say. I have another article that I'm planning on covering. Yes, I'm doing the Tim Pool thing, you'll just have to forgive me. But this article was titled, "It's time to give the elites a bigger say in choosing the president," and they eventually switched the article to "It's time to switch preference primaries." I guess they got a little bit of blowback, so we'll take a look at that in the next video. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.